to share?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like I really appreciate being able to join the Retreat Cafe because especially I've been doing like research related to contemporary science and like it started with this historians wanting to really use like psychological science method to test whether like these like religious teachings are like supported by science as well. So but a lot of research I read sometimes like
chimane ni zinda la yongwa isra ti yongwa ni zinda la yongwa kogab di kurang la ni ma kurang karsa kari chibu zor dos ni chirdang kurang gi dela ni nangcho la thongang shuk chibu chi isra ni nga zo gi tesang ta nangcho zang ma yamba tesang gi tingdu gi da ringni la yang ni tesang gi nyamne la jura di go la thongang shuk chibu chi is ni namgyu ne nga zo ni kongsa cho kurang gi ni ka na wana shira zo ni 퇴섬 기념일 때 가서 넘바는 숙청 보여res 대다 아니 가서 다 세리기 따지 시에 퇴섬 기념일 되게 배열에 되바라가 아니 투문기 차가서도 인데라 아니 세리기 따지 시에 니 리바이 쪽죠 기니 방다라는데 뒤답다 튕기대 튕기민들에 대한 관심 주치 얘기지 인기 유지 있으라 디송인데 좀 많이 디코갑디게 그런 베펜토소스 얘들아 지라 영화도 속에 네 pena chashana manzogida nangchwe nangla 퇴섬 nyamlela tuzo pa manzogi ani shirab da nyingji songdo trebore chichibugi ani yunga maari la songay tuzo pe ani yabu dosra ani korangi dezo dans ani pigi nubchoki ani nganzo semkangi tatrub dini mambayra semkan riba ki tatrub nangla ani sheye mambaji pazu tungi minde alaydi pigi la chakari leyendo dini chakari leyendo di chibachi tuzo ani pe mambo ani tungi dos 시에든지 아니 간소기 단동 아니 간소 단다 신의 선바 제지도 내야 되죠라 대상 간소기 미 망치기 퇴섬 기념례라 돼서 공기 냠례 직상도 단다 공기 냠례라 돼서 뭐다 게라로 신분 단다 전반이 시험 공례에 돼서 대상은 당연 돼서 뭐 아니 로제지도 내 우주모도 지금 상모 거기도 왔어 디스 답다 되기면 됐어 단단 간소 뭐 아니 상모 아버지 당연 돼서 뭐 신의 점 주박이 거하게 동에 거기 자와 주투기 미돌레데 세보레도 왔어. 너무나라 딜라도 zamani 신의 zam기라. 아니 셈세치 zam기니 집행시라며 봐. 대단히 대단량도 아니 싫어 보여 봐. 아니 디디니 세보레도스다. 셈베 시월네 보여나스라. 아니 삼대세치기랑 미드여지. 주는데 시월네 보여나 콜라니 싫어 비차 숙청 보여 봐. 싫어 비차 받쳐 보여 봐. 뭐 벤딜로라. 디니 하고선스 대단량도 아니 땅 안쪽에 남주 아니 그런서 공제 고급라기라 아니 딱 남주 전반이셔 공라도 좀 전반이셔 우주 드리지 부상을 땅에 좀 받다 단다 아니 제공 제 고급도 총선소자 대인도 좀 아니 공라에 대한 에 냠낸 찍찍보기 좀 마지같이 냠낸 뭐 초강간의 냠낸 초도 뒤내라 냠낸 최고의 마지기는 세부 차선스 아니 디년도에 간주 제공자의 주림다 진짜나라면서 동반이 기시라고 뭐 주도치라서 대고라야 아니 검제 그거 총선스 딜라 아니 삼나타에 대해서만 동반이라 대해서 아니 최다다라면 두메라 대해서 뭐 다지 라완진이 탑네 최담제라면 두메라 대해서 뭐 다고 아니 딘진대와 총화 최담제 딘진대와 총화래라 되니 세고 하고 있고도스 아니 다 딜라 대해서 뭐 아니 코 간데스 요래라 대해서 뭐 타니 잡도 대시인데 좀많이 가서 노초기 따로 노초기 생각이 따로 나와라. 디데이터 오시기였어. 망보지 가서기 지속이追下去就是그 되모라 아니 뭐 웬일로 유말했어. 지속이 쇠샤죠. 미 상당당하게 쇠샤죠. 디지가 이렇게서 답에 튕겨도 스파서. 이나 대zam도 마샤면서라. 아니 준도는 제가 최고예요 봐. 베타 우주 가서 태양에 제가 최고예요 봐. 딥백해지 못했어. 아니 만족이 아니 단다 만족이 아니 기시다 천주 sembal로 제고에 나서라 당보 만족 천주 sem질로 제고에 나서라 당보 만족이 아니 심제 타다 미자마이 봐 심제 타다 도와리 투 타다 돈이 메데바 대화되바 디디지는 고주고도 왔어 아니 디고주에 디 아니 만족양 비노 저기 생각이 따로다 튕겨였어 건조기 갈라게 식 다가 치마치시 말아야스라 아니 근저기다 semje 말하는 밀라라 이러다 밀라니 생각이 그거도 되어있어 그때 생각되고错过了거니 년감에 주错过了시기가 왔어 다데서 마파나 법사치가 왔어 돈이 메디와 되어야 되라서 디 켈렌체고에 대한 디 개침보 이발해 주라 아니 디다 생각 너무 저기 생각이 따르기 아니 제보다 나중에 아니 당망시로 지라다 심제도 줄어라 어디 배에 개치모르도스 대다 튀네 상마 찍을 찍도 인바 그라 상마 찍을 찍도 인바라 그래서 많이 전주 선발로래다 되네 신이 지에가 디세고 하고서 근데 대단님도 다 만족이 투몽기 차디 가려는 농협 마대바 대화 되버려 왔어 이내 대상도는 상무당나 지기면도 쓰라 감도 매발로 가요 봐 다치도 봐요 봐 냥용로 가요 봐 인도선 봐 아니 탑케바 고요 봐 밀라 봐 로바치나 가르치네 탑케바 고요 봐 디베케시 모인다 소스스 아니 대라도 좀 봐 탑케바라도 좀뭐 그런 게 아니 봐 수랑 수수기 킬레로 칠레로 들 상무당에 좀 봐. 직 잡아도 지다가 봐. 시도 좀 봐. 당긴 좀 가르마 대봐. 냠룡다 자니 쉬고요 봐. 아니 코데 오시고요 봐. 디조니 세고 하고 선스. 아니 다 딜업도 좀 봐. 아니 심지 탐지 대화 되버리 동료만 되버리 아니 다 아니 솔직히 직된데요. 아니 감매 봐 로가래 딜업도 좀 봐. 가르 타마타마들 가르 삼는 것들은 취지 자주 근데 지인한서 딜을 되고 지요다스. 디삼을 야고당 것들스. 가인은 군웅삼지 아니 자주대니 양다바지 뭐 찾기 말았어. 군웅이 야고였나야 자주를 맛밤마트나 가보러 왔어. 지자인 탑케바고에 패키지 버렸도스. 아니 랑잔도 모임 봤다. 심지 다달라라. 심지다 디다가 상마 킬렌치도나 아니 전주선방 냠 당한 주부 전주선발 해줘라. 주부 정선래. 딜을 마파병 것도스. 랑잔도 모임 봐. 아니 심지 다달라다. 대화 주의기. 아니 상 자칭부터 그런 자칭부터 니 주바야 상무디 디지털 법이고 타마타마들라니 모아다베디 패키지 모르도스 디물람자도 많이 바랑이 기와 랑이 자주디 미션지가 평화 쇼를 해줘라 딜라 법이고도스
그 코로나가 저기 샤고 정화들을 내요. 이제 또 찍지를 몰랐어요. 근데 이거를 봐야 해셔라. 이거라 코로나 생기다 보는 거지. 이거를 고치나. 아니 퇴비차를 가는 퇴비차를 먼저 수소를 빼고 땅은 좀 개다. 저는 생각보다 이미 수소야 신기해요. 먼저 신기해는 샤워만 거라. 마페를 되죠. 나는 나중에는 어떤 장장 수시차는 야된데 수시 신을 찾아라. 아무 뭐 미신만 안 해도 내게 퇴비차도 시에 빼게 좀 봐. 아니 생각은 땅은 저기 남주나라 딱지체도 생각 못 딱지체고라. 근데 또 그다음 세리도는 주로 로봇도 딱지체고라. 얘들이 제가 집어를 그래. 근데 봐. 디레라는 마샤바 카데 카데 파도 세리도는 딱지다. 그래서 주제는 뭐 이거는 그 세다가를 해라. 또 딱지체도 봐. 이제 지나고 타고 제가 이게 뭐 타투는 내다 실라서 문제 와라. 패키지보다 제가 단다 생이 도시나 시를 집어지는가 그때 소소가 깜찍 가서 유리 상담 내가 집어지는 패키지더라. 집어지는 산테 내가 라오다 장아도 단다 코로나에 책이 봐요. 책이 가서 더 많이 읽어라. 책이 나온 가르치시 되는 거 매일 가르치시 되면다야. 저는 신바이네 이슈에 같이 있는 가리는 주로 신바나 가지고 무슨 남배나 이 퇴비 찾아라. 그저 다에 베케션라. 아니 인터뷰도 되는 게 진짜 좋은 거라. 그래서 퇴비 찾아 레비 찾아 없으면 되지. 아니 그런 게 정말 멋있었다. 멋있어.
Yes. So then thank you for sharing that. You joined this course 1 week into the course, and I think you have really paid attention to the classes, to the sessions, and then as you shared with us how you are doing a study on contemplative studies, contemplative practices, then since you have a training and education from the Western view on contemplative practices and studies from a psychological point of view, then as you had the opportunity to now listen to the traditional Buddhist approach towards the same, then you can do a comparative study, and this is the approach that you have been taking, and I think it's a very effective approach. And now when we look at the way that Western science as a whole approaches its investigation, and the way that Buddhist approach their investigation, I think it's almost the same, the approach. There stress on empirical evidence, there's a stress on investigation, and these are things that are common to both things. Whereas the Buddhist approach is more geared towards the study of the mind, whereas the Western study is more geared towards the study of the material world and how the mind relates to such a material world. So I think it affords you a very good opportunity to kind of see what are the differences, what are the commonalities between these two. And as always, the process of investigation should be constant. We should not rest at a conclusion. We should always keep on carrying that process of investigation by stressing the importance of empirical evidence in both our contemplative practices in the Buddhist tradition, as well as our studies and investigation in the Western sense of the word. So then it's important to have an appreciation for the common grounds or the commonalities that we find in these different traditions and so yes, empirical evidence is very important. So even when we talk about the teachings themselves, we always say we have to relate them to our own experiences. And then yes, ultimately, now when we come to topics such as the great contemplative practices in Buddhism, such as shamatha and vipassana, then when it comes to such things, then empirical evidence points towards the importance of a union of these two things, not just cultivating shamatha alone, but nowadays mindfulness meditation has become famous, and then people forget the importance of the analytical aspect of it, wherein they just focus only about developing concentration and the subsequent kind of sense of calm that they gain from it. This is a little bit misinformed from the Buddhist perspective. It should be a fusion of the two. So this is important to remember. And then I thank you for paying really good attention in the short time that you were with us. And then now we, as a group together, I think we should learn from this comparative way of looking at things, this way of stressing on empirical evidence to come to an understanding. And whether you are a clinical psychologist, whether you come from a different tradition, it's always important to look at the commonality of different traditions and not to blow the differences that we find out of proportion. Yes. Yes. So then in Buddhism, we always talk about the importance of sharing these teachings, sharing these practices with other people to actively begin to engage in benefiting others. So likewise, I think even in academic studies, I think the whole point of such a pursuit should be able to, in the end, affect change in society, affect other people's life. So this is a responsibility we cannot afford to forget, that in Buddhism all these contemplative practices in the end is aimed towards benefiting others. So I think academic research, academic studies too should adopt such a view that it just doesn't remain a study that nobody pays attention to. You should actively make it accessible, these findings accessible, and make these findings relatable to people so that they can begin to affect changes and transformations in their life. I think this is a very big responsibility we as young people have in this day and age, in the 21st century.
이제다 아니 근데 가로 이나 샤변에 차다 무슨 지어 들어봐 간에서 보고 막상 나시 생각나져서 이내야 야 디지털 나면 좀 칼로 뭐 감리 봐 마셔
감사해요.
뭐 감리 마셔 쳐봐야 나 주는 거예요 아야 마셔 나가야 돼 이제 차방으로 다가 또 힘들어 이제 다시 더 근데 좀 타다 미미니 약간 좀 사실 저 열어 봐 세상에 뭐 가면 당당한 솔직히 로드리 지역들을 쳐 그냥 뭐들이 같이 생각하고 봐 지금 점점 되고 이게 다 생각 마당이라 감독이 대충 참 주던 손시에서 시에서야 만져는 요 생각 주로 치거든요.
So then, when we make the point that we as young people have a big responsibility in this 21st century, then this is because whether the world has peace and harmony depends really on this generation, on the young generation, to create that kind of peace and harmony that the world needs. So it's important to kind of be open-minded, not to be too close-minded, and then to kind of take it upon ourselves, motivate ourselves to effect change in our immediate circles, in our societies, and so forth. So this is the point that I'm making. And now, when generally this is another thing. Generally, when people think of Buddhism, then they think of love, compassion, wisdom, and then they equate it to the study of the mind itself. And this is, I think, this is the general idea people have about Buddhism, like contemplative practices regarding to the transformation of the mind, development of love, compassion, and wisdom. And then people forget that Buddhism actually offers investigation into the nature of reality itself, wherein it talks about how the universe came to be in the Abhidharma Kosha, the manifest treasury of knowledge. It talks about how the cosmos, or the Buddhist cosmology, and then there are also ultimately the Buddhist approach, ultimately for a practitioner, is an investigation into the true nature of reality. So then when you look at that approach, then there are many texts which begins to explore how everything is made up of atoms and how these atoms come together, and how there are many different texts that explores the physical aspect of the world and of reality too. So I think we should not discount that aspect of the Buddhist approach too. Pujaji.
I'm not prepared today. I didn't prepare. So I just, when it comes to the Lamrim, we have always heard that Lamrim is a consolidated teachings, all the teachings of Buddha have been consolidated in our book. So that makes it so complete. So, so I was grateful to study it again because we did it last time also, and the perfections and everything we had studied it, so we knew okay, this comes after that, and we knew it. But then to really know what does it mean with each perfection. So now I think this teaching has inspired me to explore more of the teachings, starting from renunciation, renouncing the suffering, renouncing everything. We are in a quest for truth, and all the philosophies like that are a quest. So how precisely, oh God, anyways. Okay, so there's path through skillful means. So we learned about the skillful means, about and for me, learning about emptiness. I'm more interested in maybe these esoteric ideas tells me like how much more preparation, how much more study needs to go into it, because this is a complete exploration of the nature of reality. And so yeah, about like the importance of cultivating shamatha, that is after perfecting the spiritual needs, except for the perfection of wisdom, although before the prerequisite, so that you can be in shamatha without any challenges. And then from there, once I'm, what can I say? Whenever you were speaking, like I got everything. Like, I was like, we understand it, but then yeah, the thing is, the onus is on us to take responsibility, to be mindful. Like my thing is like to be mindful of what I do, how I'm perceiving things, how to see things correctly. Yeah, pretty much that.
That's tini koran tangbo ni gawa shukchi muki ki dus kayina na ni mi tsama yu tonang pe yabo che dus peche peche mi ganga ki ni koran la yaga tonang che esris ni ina koran tanda tari shira me esra ina da lamrim la di nima koran ni nima ki manzo yarne ki chi tsinda de la yang koran ni jang nyong sra ni che zang lamrim la di da sanje ki ni sung tada chikdu duba chikdu asa ni chi inda ni tanda lamrim nyamgur di tile jang ni duba ni kodewa tindi chirwas ni che zang ni di lar ya ni kugab lobchung chiye ki kugab chungcho de la ni lobchung chiye ki kugab chungwa de la ni gawa tang ni kari chi la ki isra ni zo da parangi talo di na la ni parchin chug la jo ra di kare kare ime ni di parchin riri kare ime parchin riri ki mo kare ime ra peyun kare ime di zo ra ya buchwe sons ani zo di da nga zo ki teta we parchin ki nyamni la ma lengwa ne ni nyejung la ya chego ya keching gore dos kowa la nga zo nangwa nita na kare na ani nyejung ma chi na ani nga zo ki dekwa ra chuki ma res nga zo ki nangchwe la ya di ni ngobe nilu la cheba chigi yo ras ngobe nilu la cheba chego ya ni dekwa ra chuki ras ani dekwa ra chuki la ya di da tatu kare chi na ya kunzo ki tardu ki mi yu taga ra ras dekwa ra chuki di ngobe nilu ki dekwa de ra chuki di ras che zan teta we dekwa ra chuki ya na nangchwe ki tawa nita na nyejung la ya di keching gore dos dunye la ani chuwa dan kowa la chuwa tawa ya di ani tine ani nga zo ki da kesi teta we ani nyamlengi lama shugu ya na tab keba tab me na ani miwa chi ani teta nyamdo ani da nga zo shirab la ya di da ju me go ras da shirab la ya di la ani nga zo ki nam ju da sama ki ju ni dishi jadang ani pa tuandam nyingwa ni dishi jadang tinte mambu chi ras ani nga zo ki shirab la ya di da shagdo zamba tongba nyi la shagu das tongba nyi di ya ani tani la ma lo we ani uma ki tongba nyi chi la shagu ras tongya dobe shirab di tani la ma lo we uma chi shagu ras di shagu la zamba ani nga zo da tinte chudu lupu chi shivu chi ma chu na ya sra ani da nga zo ki chö tamchi yore sra ine nga zo ki nawa na shi yo ma re le di kowa de le sons da ani di le yundu zamba ani nga zo da tandung kaze ki ani lobjung che go yo ba tandung kaze ki cheba che go yo ba tinte ki ani sowa shuk shimu chi le sons ani tine ani da teta we tongma ni to go yo na ani tsechi ki samden zam ki ma yo ma shiga songre ki ngo ne ani sem shiwar ni ani cheba che go yo ba tinte kechi go yo ba ani sor sons ani namgyune susu ki chulang gundo ani chenpa shishin go yo ba gulung la ta go yo ba ani samlo la ta go yo ba tetsu ani kechi go to sons
근데 저는 보니 참에 그때도 그냥 보시더라고. 나라를 빼시네. 저거 영화에서 뭐 무슨 주의가 남들이 깔로나네. 당아서 이만 좀 시리라. 그래서 제가 내 뮤직 동작다 되어는 요구를 하잖아. 그래서 담보리에 받다 단단히 집에 그냥 안돼. 동아시 통도 빼야 그랬어. 그냥 알아서 주의가 되게 깔로나니 보시면 쉽게 시리가. 진짜 이름이 되는 빼깔을 가지고 잘 다다르지. 얘네 저런 저번에 가리만 가리는 베이킹 슈베 돈으로라 연나로 치치마스라 그거는 지세 양식이 그러니까 지시라 네 다단다 보라게 파신 둘러야 돼 거야 찾수가 그래다 파신도 땅 수상이잖아 서로 뒤에서 잡고 갔다 봐 보여라 네 장소 같은 거 그렇지 단단 뭐 하시지 못 쳐라 그때 그 수수 가지에 발장만 나네 된다면로 땅하고 그걸로 가지지만 너무 주사기 시절이 보다 그래 제시기 때 가르리 뭐 하고 내가 나한테 가지지 땅한테 가서 신발 갖고 싶어 담보는 즉 가지만 참아지 장하신 수 듀마도 시리다 단단한 소리 사면으로 컴방 마서는 마시를 있잖아 그러니까 나는 저런 때부터는 이지도나 이지도는 그거에 기초라 난 수술 먼저 지났으면 네 인기만 먼저 걔들 수 당신하고 이게 되게 좋다 되는 인기비지게로 보면 소소 상담 소소 내면이 되는 단단한 소리 좀 먼저 나오더라고 수술 고도 미리가는 미리도 희저기요 세상 좀 마시게 들어잖아 아니 소소로 아니 하마고 되는 게 있지 그렇지 아니 형 단단한 소리 다 타투는 어디 대발을 째려야 그래요 사실 좀 되게 취리에 하고 샀대야 그런 째야 되거나 대번째 대번째 다들 안 거라기 때문에 아니 요즘도 취직 거라 이해서 손을 야가이 다들 거라 시간이 사대기 우리 까와지에 샀대야 째 대번째 그러는 것이라 뭐라 진짜 뭐다 아주 너무 애들 같이 계시 따라가지고 왜 공주디요 몸들의 지금도 용이라 다 하시기 싫어 무슨 따라지 자다 고반들 주변에서 쓰리는 아 몸적인데 몸들이 가다 이제 밑에 버릇이自己的那个想要整个不也是目的开始뒤에서 뒤에 말이 가기도 좀 제공점 아니 한 가지 일단 제 제공점만 제대로 하려야 지키 신바지 치고를 해 니버를 이제 뭐도 참 지지라 가다만 참을 제대로 되게 싶다
Okay, then first off, I really would like to say that I'm amazed with the way that you approach these sessions, how you are so consistently attentive throughout these teachings, and I really appreciate it, and I thank you all for paying such close attention to the teachings, because personally, when I was young and I had to sit through teachings for 2-3 hours, sometimes when we were young in the nunnery, then there used to be government officials who used to visit us from out of nowhere. And then these people like to give long speeches, 2-3 hours, and then we used to feel like, when will this end? But the way that you approach these teachings is with full attention, really being engaged with the discussions. So I'm really amazed at how you approach sitting through these sessions, looking at the same face every day. But I really appreciate it, and I'm really amazed by that. So thank you, everyone. And now, yes. So then, when we're talking about the great perfections, now we had a somewhat detailed discussion about what are the nature of these perfections, what are its qualities, and how one can begin to cultivate these perfections within our practice. So generally, in the classical monastic institution, we spend 7 years learning and exploring the great perfections. So in order to develop a true and comprehensive understanding, you need to develop. It takes time and effort. But what we have now is the basic foundation upon which we can begin that contemplation. It's like planting a seed, or if you want to build a house, laying the groundwork at this point. So in any kind of activity or human endeavor, it's important to first have a basic foundation first. But we make the mistake of reaching for all sources of information first, and then we cannot make sense of these information and teachings later on. It's important to first have a basic foundation, and from there on we can build our understanding, develop our understanding further. So yes, this is a good point that we need to keep in mind, that we have the foundation, and now we need to expand on this further by constantly dedicating ourselves to contemplating, investigating, and so forth. And then yes, philosophy, in the end, is the pursuit of truth. And the Buddha himself went in search of the truth when he went into the jungles to meditate. And the Indians say that he went in search of satya, which means truth. So yes, in the end, it's the pursuit of the truth. All we do, all the human endeavor, all philosophical endeavor is geared towards that, the pursuit of the truth. And another point that I want to make and stress again is that generally when we think about the Buddhist practice and when we think about meditation as a practice, then we get the idea that it's about mindfulness, it's only about concentrating on an object. And then we fail to understand that there are two types of meditation from the Buddhist perspective. A sort of stabilizing meditation having to do with concentration, and then an analytical form of meditation. And then when people who are into meditation and all these contemplative practices, when they begin to visit the monasteries, then they see nuns and monks engaging in endless debates in the courtyards, and then begin to make the criticism that these are not, they are debating, they are intellectually investigating all these things, but they are never meditating or contemplating at all. This is a very wrong conception, because what is effective, what the nuns and monks in the debate courtyard are effectively doing is analytical meditation, and forming the basis upon which they can build such an analytical meditation. And now this is not to say that analytical meditation is more important than concentration meditation, or concentration meditation is more important than analytical meditation. As we already said, to have a comprehensive approach by having both practices is the Buddhist approach, the importance of both approach. Having concentration, contemplative practices that are informed by the desire to build concentration, as well as by the desire to investigate things. So the fusion or the union of the two is very important. But first, understanding that just mindfulness and concentration is not the only form of meditation there is. Analytical meditation exists too. So I myself walked with the same misconception when I was young, and it reminds me of the time when a foreigner was visiting our nunnery, and then I was very young at that time, and then he asked me, like, do you ever meditate? And then I answered, no, we don't meditate. And then I told my teacher that this foreigner was asking me if we ever meditated, and I said, we don't meditate. And then my teacher began to explain to me that what you are effectively doing in the courtyard is meditation, wherein you are focused on the topic at hand, and then you are using your rational analysis to come to an understanding. So all of that act is a meditation. It's just that sometimes we get the impression that meditation is that assuming that posture or these different physical postures, staying in a monastery or a temple. This is the impression that we grow up with, or this is the impression that grows on us. But meditation is not really confined to such things. Meditation can be practiced when you're walking. Meditation can be practiced when you're thinking about something. Meditation can be practiced in all aspects of our life. So dominate Monica, would you like to share a little bit?
I'm not prepared.
그냥 가르치니까 개구지요 말이 나도 너무 자지구라.
Okay. So anything you want to share, it's fine.
So mainly during teachings I was focused on how to apply these teachings, new knowledge into my life, and at the same time I wanted to find answers to my eternal questions. And basically not because theory didn't get to know anything new, but approach and like how put this this theory together, it was new. Yeah.
그래서 진짜 그런 길을 미치는 거다 간데스 냠네 지역을 해줘라. 나만 속에 다 취로 인하여 이 취는 순종이 남된다서 간데스 냠네 지역을 해야 되니 야부통소스. 이 남준이가 저다 취 그런 게만 배자로 어디다 계사와 처럼소스. 주자도 저라. 주자 마치로 아마 오늘 진행스라. 이나야다 주자도 저 랑랭 간데 담을 해줘. 디니 싸워지 그래서스. 디가 메시나나 키에지 그래도스.
단지 내가 오늘 때를 계신다. 수수시버디 디가라. 양양에서 전장에서 들어가 거기서 지시사버디 신기도. 제가 상태가 상황에 쓰는 거는 좀 되지. 그냥 지방이 러브치니 쉬치니 하린 심바 구형을 제백이. 이거는 일단 미스나가 진정한 취미를 뭐 상하고 딱 부서져요. 그냥 나도 있다는 게 다예요. 그래서 그냥 얘기 가마치래요. 말에 내가 이제 급쇼에 얘기 근데 다는 그래. 당하는 데를 집도기 오래 가는 거 같아. 근데 다는 사람은 나랑 레이다. 근데 sometimes 수수 맞아요. 나가. 근데 만나 딱 해야만 미쳐가지고 배가 참아내. 배가 먹고 진짜 쇼를 내고 그래. 가지고 말에 나도 배가 먹고 이제 수수 가만히 너도 로드하지 못했다. 다시 배도 종나 하나 와야 되더라. 내가 내가 상담 안 줘야 돼. 내 모토로 책이 나도 정말 샤샤해. 상담 가는 데가 내일 수준 예리를 제 수준 예 저거 이제 참고지. 아니 수준 그러면 가도 그렇지. 네 직상 야마토를 간다. 네 감이도 그거는 유신의 야시부터 내단지 스스로 있는 감이로 있나. 네가 그냥 세상 건 저 트레일러에 아니 저거 지 그리는 마데어 제가 내가 네키라이 간다니까 휴식 차와 하고 내가 배가 주니까 이때 편도를 딱.
So I'm very happy to hear that you're walking away from here with an understanding of how to approach the teachings and how to practically cultivate them in our daily lives. So one thing that I want to say about the teachings in general is we shouldn't approach the teachings just as an intellectual exercise, wherein we learn new things, hear about new terms, hear about like practices which sound esoteric to us, new to us, and then leave it just at that. The point of the teachings is to have a transformative effect in the way that we live our lives. This is the most important thing. And then in order for the teachings to come, in order for the teachings to have such a transformative effect in our lives, then the way we think needs to change first. And we can only change the way we think only when we begin to open our minds first. Being open-minded is very important. And so then if we are always like caught up with the incessant undercurrent of thoughts and emotions, and then it does not give us that opportunity to be open-minded at all, and it does not give us the opportunity to open ourselves to change or transformation at all. So it's important to be open-minded and accepting first. For example, I say this because if I relate it to myself, and as human beings we have that mental chatter, as it is said, the undercurrent of thoughts and emotions. And if we always are like only engaged with that mental chatter, then we become very narrow-minded. We become stressed, obsessed, and so forth. So relating to myself, if I begin to give into the mental chatter and all the time, then like I have a lot of things that can discourage me. I have a lot of things that can demotivate me all the time. For example, my parents are not with me. I have lost my country, and so if I think about these things all the time, then how can I begin to practice myself? How can I begin to help others? It's impossible. So rather than thinking about it, I accept my situation, saying that not just myself, there are other Tibetans too who have come, who have escaped, run away from Tibet and come here. And even though my parents are not here with me, other Tibetans who have come into exile do not even know if their parents are alive or not. So when I think about these things in these things in these terms, then I am more accepting of my own situation. I am more open-minded, and I know that if I just keep thinking about it, it doesn't make the situation any better for myself. It creates more mental hurdles in my mind. So this is why it's important to not give into that incessant chatter, thoughts and emotions all the time, and then exacerbate our mental stress and our mental disturbances by these. So in order for us to effectively have these transformations from the teachings, it's important to relate it to ourselves, to our experiences. And if you want to do that, then it's important to open up our minds to these teachings. And in order to open up our minds, then it's important not to give in to the incessant chatter and mental chatter, thoughts and emotions all the time. So then, so as we already talked about how it's just not us, ourselves, who are suffering through things or situations. The whole of the world, every human being is going through some things. And this is the nature of our existence. And now, whenever we come face to face with adverse situations, then it's important, I think, to be open-minded, to be accepting of our situations. And in order to come to such a place of acceptance and being open-minded, I remind you again of Shantideva's words from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. If something can be remedied, why worry about it? If something cannot be remedied, then why worry about it? So when you look at that verse, then I hope it is helpful to remind yourself of being more accepting, being more open-minded, and not to stress too much. Then I also asked all of you to try to memorize the dedication prayer. Have you been able to do so? Let's see if you are able to recite it together as a group.
Can we see?
Okay.
In YouTube, there's just one recitation which is of this old Tibetan man. No, like not a good video of recitation of this. Not a good video, like a proper video of this.
YouTube nala ringdongchi tongsos pyogamiji di chanchusen juron jorbidus. Ina shiraya bu jorbidus tina. Then if it's not a good recitation, then you should recite it really well then in English. And since you say you work in music,
Tido 가서 되지. 부담 세상 가자니 레지던시도.
네.
오늘 부지기 되다.
네.
간제야 보더라. 나디서 밑에 총사에다 가야 돼. 쓰드다 내 거들고 봐. 나도 지지 이 땅. 내도 미리 손음 쉬었어.
So yes, this is the effect of music, because when we from long time back in Bodh Gaya, they used to play this recitation by a certain person, and he almost sings it, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, the refuge prayer, and it still plays to this day in that place, and it's a really good recitation. And I think like that person must have accumulated a lot of merit, even if he's passed away from this world. Okay, then let's recite it together as a group. Yes? Yes.
देखिए चीज़ इधर वजह मारा है ब्रेकफास्ट करा है
You didn't have breakfast, I think.
किचन में ये शुरू लोग कर रहे हैं सर maybe English maybe
Recite together in English. This is better. Okay, so we end the session with a recitation in English of the start of the generation prayer together as a group. Page number 44. May the precious bodhicitta arise, if not yet born. When generated, may it never diminish, but increase more and more. Okay, then the lunch. Judging from the way that you recited it, I think you need lunch. So let's break 5 minutes before today. So in the afternoon sessions, we will continue with the